Good evening. How you doing? So, as the video states, today we're going to talk about sadness. I've been sitting with sadness for a couple of days, and when I got to the other side of it and I got through it, I wanted to come talk about it. I think documenting the journey is important. I think a lot of people need to be heard. I don't think I'm any less than anyone else. So they always talk about sadness being bad. It's this terrible thing. Melancholy, depression. They have lots of words, lots of drugs, and lots of therapists to help you manage sadness. Has anybody else ever wondered why it is that we haven't been able to cure it? If we have so many professionals on the job, and if there's so many ways to spend money to not be sad, should I then come to the conclusion that money doesn't stop sadness? Not whether or not it buys happiness, but whether or not it stops sadness. See how weird that is? We can have the argument about whether or not money buys happiness. I think it does. I think you can be happy with money. But I don't think money causes any stopgap for you to be sad. And I bet the more money you have and the more isolated you are, the bigger the sads are because there's less people to share it with. And there's probably more to the sadness because you created a false illusion with your money, which then triggered that sadness. And this is just my running theory, I'm talking philosophy here, a working philosophy that I use. And so sadness, it's a big one. It's like flushing the toilet. That's how I look at sadness. It's like a digestive reaction to things in your life. It's emotional cleaning, if you will. For point in case, you ever got a good cry about something and felt better after you're done crying? That's what I think sadness is. I think it's the last step to like letting go of something. If you're not mad at it and you're not accepting it and you're not denying it and you're not blame shifting, and you're just sitting and being sad about it, it's like the last stage in healing, right? Yet sadness is something that people seem to cling to as a lifestyle, as a set of parameters in which to experience everything around them. An identity, if you will. And I don't think this is sadness at all. I think it's narcissism. I don't think that sad people are anything more than narcissistic people that aren't harming. I don't know how else to express that. I feel like you can choose at any point in time to experience something, but if you decide to experience the same thing over and over every day and never put space and time and distance between a past something and yourself, then I think you're at some point you have to accept that you're knowing and willingly doing it. And even if that's probably a really unpopular opinion and we need to make sure that everybody's feelings are satisfied, I don't think it's anything more than disease. I don't know how else to look at this idea of people using sadness as like a shield, or using sadness as a, poor me, or I'm a constant victim, or I don't have any this and I have a lack mindset. I think that's not sadness. I think it's being a narcissist. I think it's a whole bunch of psychological disorders, and they're just like all kind of balanced in there, so it just from the outside looks like somebody has a rough life. And I think that even though anything can traumatize you, I also believe you can heal from any trauma. You can't have it both. You know what I mean? Like, you can't have it one way and not have the other. if anything that can traumatize you can traumatize you, which is anything, according to psychologists. And I'm not disputing the point at all, but the opposite and equal reaction to that, which must exist, is each and every trauma that we experience, there is a way for us to heal it within ourselves and move past it and not have it be part of who we are, or how we portray ourselves, or what we create in the world. So it's weird because it's like therapy and drugs coddle sadness to mask it or to tell themselves they're a better person without dealing with it. And I know probably psychologists would be like, this guy is just full of it. But the thing is am I really? Because if people understood how to deal with sadness and move through it, how much therapy would be needed? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry we're talking about here. Don't forget that. Sadness is a multi-billion-dollar a year industry just in the United States. It's really weird. You manufacture the idea that you should have a lack mindset and therefore be sad for not having something or being something or looking like something or doing something or owning something. A side product of capitalism is to make people feel like they're not good enough if they're not on the curve of what is considered capitalism. And that really is the society we live in today. It really is the parameters in which people have to explore the world from that mindset. Capitalism is the death of the human soul as far as I can see. I can't see a single positive benefit from capitalism. I don't know. I feel like you could do it a different way. Do I have all the answers? No. I'm slowly just trying to work through, philosophy of how I view it, you know? I'll work on the world's problems. Maybe someday I'll throw a wrench at it and see if that changes anything. But I think it's a collective problem. I think it's bigger than one person's ideas or designs. I think that it takes a lot of hard conversations like I'm attempting to have, but on a grander scale with like humanity as a whole. It's sadness, real sadness, the one you feel inside yourself. And if you feel sadness for something you don't have, you're lazy. I'm sorry, you're lazy. If it's a physical thing that you want to own and you don't own it, you're lazy. If you're sad because someone died, well, this is probably very insensitive, but they don't care. It's just like holding on to anger at somebody and you don't talk to them anymore. Anger only poisons you. Sadness that somebody else died only poisons you. And you can be sad, but there's a difference between being sad and identifying as a different human being because you're sad. You see the difference? Grief is a very powerful thing to have to deal with and go through. But the rest of the world is still going on at all times while that grief is happening. And I don't think that behooves anyone to not deal with grief, right? And I can't say that there won't be days that you're not sad or you don't miss someone. But that's not the big sad. This is a reaction to not having anymore. And I know that's a really hard way to look at it, but it's not having somebody in your life anymore that either you could depend on or you loved or treated you a certain way or made sandwiches for you a certain way. I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but grief and sadness are not the same thing. Sadness is this, we're getting there. And this is just how I view it. Remember, think that I got the answers to anything. I just sharing my view in the hopes that, you know, you can rebut it and say what you need to say, and you can call me an idiot if you need to, and we can discuss it. I've opened a conversation, you know. I don't think grief and sadness are the same thing. I think that there is a wall between those two. And you can be sad while you're grieving, but sadness is what stays with you. Grief doesn't. Grief is a reaction to a hard loss. And it can be money, it can be your house. Like, you can grieve physical things, but it leads into sadness. Sadness is a state of mind. That's why it says sadness is a meditation on this video. So I'm going to tell you what I do with sadness. I don't get sad very often. When I get sad, it used to be because it was something I'd done. I get sad about that. For my actions, my decisions, the way that I treated someone, the way that I talked, these things did make me sad. It's called having a conscience. And I started working on those things years ago. And I'm still working on those things because nobody's perfect and no one ever will be. Or we need to put your face in the dictionary under the word perfect. I did a whole video on perfection. But it doesn't change the fact that sadness is a good thing. Sadness, to me, is when you've gotten through everything else. You got through your ego and you got through your secondary emotions. Remember, we got to talk like we're psychologists on this page because and you got through, you know, blaming other people, you know, the 5 stages of grief. That's the last one's acceptance. Okay? And then you're sad when you're getting into acceptance because there's nothing left. It's just you're sad and this is how it is, and there's nothing, nobody to blame and no fingers to point, no buildings to burn down and nothing. You're just sad. And I think it's great because if you sit in that sadness, if you sit there and you identify what it is about what's going on that makes you sad, and you just do a checklist. Maybe I'm too analytical. Maybe, you know, I think too logically. Maybe it's my problem. I don't know. But just make a checklist. And if it's something you can change, you embrace it. And if it's something you can't change, it's out of your control, you throw it in your river. Remember the river? You know, that meditation video that I did and a bunch of people watched? You always got to use your river. So I'll sit on this edge bank of my river, if you will. Here's an analogy for you. And I'll sit there and I'll look at my sadness like a book. And every time I find a page in there, there's nothing I can do about it. And I would probably just stay sad forever. I rip that page out of the book and I throw it in the river. It floats on down the river. And I go through the book, you know. And then eventually we removed all the things that you can't change anymore. Then you're left with the things that you probably can change or can change in the future, or not could have changed, because you can't could have anything. You're living in the now. You're not living in the past. You can't go back in time, but you can change how you act in the future about something, you see? So sometimes what's left in the book after you rip the pages out and throw it in the river because there's nothing you can do about it, sometimes that book is thick. There's a bunch of stuff. You got a book full of stuff. You're like, man, all of this. You know what happens though after a while? There starts to be less stuff left in the book that you have to keep and work on. There's a lot more pages that you can just throw in the river and let them go and let God, I guess is how you would say it. I don't know. Like, I don't I'm so touchy when it comes to the idea of spirituality or religion, theology, or like even philosophy. It's very much centered against and around free will and the ability to do anything you can come up with out of your mind in this reality. I think it's a beautiful, miraculous thing. But it doesn't solve any problems for anybody. There's no Jehovah's Witness at the end of the rainbow with a pot of gold, and some Jesus crackers. I have a real problem with it. But I don't have a problem with understanding that I have to let go of things. And this meditation I use is the mind flip to help me sort things in my head. And I think that's the point of these videos, is to be able to see if it helps anybody else. If it even helps one person, that's pretty good, because the world's crazy right now. So I just went through and I just sat down with some sadness last couple of days. Just kind of tuned the whole world out, sat down with it. And I went through that book. Did I mention that you write your own book? So when you sit down, you're already going to have the whole book, unless you lie to yourself, in which you got to probably go a lot longer ways where you get to where this works easy for you. This might take longer than 61 days for you. You get sad, you just go sit next to your river. And I fine tooth comb this book. I did. I hit myself in the head with it. I threw it at things. Slept on it a couple nights. I did everything I could to keep this book. And then I threw the whole thing in the river. What I'm going through is tough. And I have some melancholy left, which I think is sadness leaving my body. And tomorrow I'm going to go right back to I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to keep feeling this until I don't feel it anymore. I'm going to make sure that it has all the space that it needs to wear itself out and turn itself back into energy and flow back into my river. Because it's like sadness is like, remember I always talk about when you're in your river, you're standing in your river. That's where you're supposed to be every time you do this meditation. So it's almost like sadness is like a physical manifestation of water of myself sitting on the bank. It's like it takes out of the river. Instead of being a solid river, there's two of me, and one of me is sitting on the bank trying to just beat themselves up with this book while I'm standing in the river going, well, that's weird. And so I threw that book back in. I'm gonna work through this. I'll get through this. It'll be all right. And I just wanted to come and share that with you. I wanted to say to you that meditation works. Knowing yourself works. Being aware of who you are as a human being works. Even on the worst days, they're not that bad. Even when all the things that you value in life are gone, it's only temporary. And there's no amount of now that can ever take my memories away. Only drugs and alcohol take your memories away. Believe that. Or really bad car wrecks. I can do it too. But short of those things, making those decisions, which I don't, you can't take away all my memories that I have. And I've got a bunch of good ones. And so, I feel really loved right now. I feel like I'm self loved. I don't know how else to explain that to you. I'm really grateful for myself, for teaching myself how to think. I know how to speak. I'm really, really, really good at communication and words. really enjoy the human language that we all currently are using. It's a lot of fun. I love the word fuck. I can't help it. I don't shit, goddamn, asshole, cunt. Ooh, that's a good one. I pissed somebody off with that one. They're just words to me. They don't mean anything to me. But they all mean something to somebody else. The sadness, though, you should be joyful for sadness. You should be happy for sadness because it gives you a chance to do a soul inventory. When you're sad, you're not lying to yourself as much. It's a lot harder to lie to yourself when you're fucking crying and you know you fucked up. Even if you want to pretend that it didn't happen when you stop crying, while you're crying, you know it's just terrible. And that's where growth happens. Growth comes with water. Water is sadness. I think that's a beautiful thing, even when there's a whole ocean of it.